Cover Killer Nation, it's time for an album review. It's time for, it's a bit of a debut. It is, but it isn't. A couple of years ago, whenever I saw Porcupine Tree, there was a band that's opened for them, that supported them on the bill, and that band was Bigelf. Now, Bigelf's last album came out in 2008, so I, as Cover Killer or Cover Killer Nation, did not get the opportunity to review any work from this band. So, in this respect, it is a debut. However, I do believe that whenever I reviewed that concert in 2010, before my original account got suspended, I did mention this band, and I did talk about them. So, even though that was for a short period of time, and that is no longer available unless I can magically find it, this is the first time we're ever going to talk about Bigelf on this channel, and I'm excited to do that with their new album, Into the Maelstrom. Now, this is a group that has been around since the early part of the 1990s. They actually started off as a bit more of a glam/doom act, if you can believe that, and has gradually manifested to their newfound glory and newfound love within the ranks of progressive rock and progressive metal. And this is one that definitely takes on a lot of different things that I will mention as the review progresses. However, the one thing I must say is that this album here had extensive help from a gentleman that we all know very well, a gentleman who has actually been quite everywhere lately in various different projects, some good, some not so good. The man, of course, is Mr. Mike Portnoy, formerly of Dream Theater. In fact, it was stated that for one member of Bigelf, his conversations with Portnoy was one of the only reasons why Bigelf continued after their last album, I guess. Once he had left Dream Theater, Portnoy that is, those two remained in constant conversation, and that actually propelled Bigelf to continue. And we are actually very thankful for this, because Bigelf is a fantastic group, and this album proves it. This is 12 tracks in length, unless you get the deluxe edition, which has 3 additional remixes on it, which only adds about 10 minutes further to the runtime. However, still that gives you roughly about an hour's worth of music, and definitely an hour's worth of very interesting music. You can definitely tell some of their elder ideals mixed within the prog majesty that you have on this album. There are some moments like on the track High, which is track number 9, where you can kind of see where that little stoner vibe that some people talked about from the early days kind of can set in and kind of can still be there. And you can also tell Mike Portnoy's assistance on this album as well, because the drumming is certainly something that stands out. The tone of the guitars is something that is also very prevalent, and I like the tone of the band overall, because at times, this band really sounds like what the Beatles would sound like if they decided to become a little bit more of a progressive band. And some may even argue that with their latter work, the Beatles tried to transform into something that could have resembled a progressive band, that they were almost doing something that was the precursor for what prog was eventually going to become in the 1970s with bands such as Kansas and Yes and Rush. One could say that. However, Bigelf is definitely taking this to the extent where you're almost listening to tracks and thinking to yourself, well, man, if the Beatles were still alive and still doing stuff here in 2013, this might be something that they were doing. And I know it's 2014. I'm giving them a year just in case they all died at once. I don't know. But yeah, this is something where the tone of everything really does seem to strike a familiar chord there, and it's definitely awesome. There's definitely a lot more of the resonance of voice. There's definitely a lot more of the pitch and the volume to it. There's a lot of rasp to it, and there's also a lot of great usage of what you would consider to be some technological ideas or some technological noise to kind of really go along with this idea of kind of being, in hypersleep, an incredible time machine. And I'm quoting, titles right now. You can definitely tell that there is a bit of a theme that has gone on with a couple of these tracks of space travel, space exploration, alien exploration, things like that. And it's certainly something that is really, really good. I really like the theme. It's something that is loosely based here and there, that has some deviations here and there. Alien Frequency was the first track that I heard off of this album, track number 4. It was featured in Prog Magazine as one of the tracks on their monthly CD that they give with the magazine. Got to give big props to Prog Magazine for definitely advancing the world of prog and making it available to more individuals. And this track is unique basically because for 4 minutes you hear this very, very, simple sounding, verse structure that has a little bit of echo effect, a little bit of reverb on it, and then it thrusts its way right into a very powerful chorus, one where you can definitely hear the dynamisty of the band, and you can definitely tell where this band can easily transition from progressive rock to a more progressive metal sounding culture. And this is one where that transition is a very, very key thing that allows Bigelf to really expand its horizon overall on a musical scope and gives them a lot more options. It gives them a lot more outs whenever they perhaps have written themselves musically into a corner. It really doesn't seem that much like a corner. Instead, it just seems like they found their way to a crossroads, and it's just their determination what side of the coin they decide to go on, and more often than not, they choose the right road. This is one where I also enjoy Mr. Harry McQuay, I think is the way in which it is spoken. I'm trying to recall the song. And that's, again, something that reminds me of the Beatles a lot, and I really love it. It's to the point where I want to suggest this song on the next store mix for FYE at the Uniontown Mall through my boss, mainly because he is a huge Beatles fanatic, and I really, really love the vibe that I get, even though these are two completely different bands, and Bigelf definitely has a lot more oomph to what they do. This is also one that is able to mix the long with the not so long, and it's not one where it's going to seem too overbearing on a listener. There's a 3-part finale, ITM, which is 8 minutes in length, and it's definitely a great, great fitting in for this album. Edge of Oblivion is also more than 6 minutes in length. The aforementioned track, High, is 7 minutes in length, and these are songs that keep you really along for the ride. They really keep you and suck you in, and I really have a lot of appreciation for that. Not much I can really complain about whenever it comes to this record. I think it's very solidly done. Sometimes it is something where the songs will seem a little weaker in some spots than in others. It's definitely not one where I feel this is a magnum opus. I feel that this is certainly an impressive opus. This is certainly one that has a really affected what a lot of people think about Bigelf. They are definitely paying it a little bit more mind, a little bit more attention. It's getting a little bit more press thanks to the prevalence of Prog Magazine, as well as getting reviews and really being looked at as a must-have prog release here in 2014. And I definitely have to agree with that. This is one where you definitely want to pick it up if you're a fan of the progressive music genre, whether it be rock or metal, because you're going to find a little bit of both on this record. Something will satisfy, for sure. And really, in reality, the whole thing will satisfy because it's brought together very nicely, and it is one that is represented beautifully. I have to give this an 84 out of 100. Definitely a solid release. Definitely great to see these guys after 6 years worth of dormancy. Glad to see these guys are still doing something. I remember that the night after the Porcupine Tree and Bigelf show, the very first thing that I did was seek out the remainder of their albums, and had a little bit of difficulty, but then, of course, I had to do it. I had to listen to as much as I could, be it on YouTube or be it however I did back in 2010. It was a long time ago, and I can't remember it all. I wish that I could. But thank you to Bigelf, thank you to Mike Portnoy, thank you to all of you in the Cover Killer Nation. Please check these guys out, and once you do, or if you already have, let me know what your favorite track off of this album is, Into the Maelstrom, and what your thoughts about Bigelf's discography, either that or your favorite song from their discography, happen to be in the comments below. Thank you very much, guys, and have a good night.